You're green. I am.
Okay, so let's talk about Wicked, and if you're like me and you've never experienced the musical before and this is your first time, you might think to yourself, where do we go from here? How does this all overlap with The Wizard of Oz? And we're here to talk about that today. So this is going to be spoilers for what potentially comes after part 1 of Wicked the movie based on what happens in the Wicked musical, because the Wicked musical has a part 1 and a part 2, you could say as well, where there's like an intermission after the first part, and the first part of the Wicked musical ends with defying gravity, just as the first movie did. But we don't have a 15-minute intermission, y'all. We have a year intermission, so we have some time to talk about what potentially could be happening in the next film. So of course, if you don't want to know anything about the Wicked musical or what comes after, this is full of spoilers for part 2, which potentially will make it onto the big screen, as they have already filmed this, and it looks like they are pretty much so adapting the musical as it is. So like I said, if you don't want any spoilers about the film part 2 of Wicked, this is your chance to get out of here, but you can come back to other videos we have, because we have a ton of videos on pop culture. But if you want the spoilers and you just want to know what's going to happen next, this is for you. So let's get into Wicked part 2 and what's going to happen in that part 2. Like I said, spoilers for the next movie that comes out till next year. But if you've watched the musical, you already know. I just want to discuss them because they're so interesting to me. I've never watched the musical, and I don't really care about spoilers, but let's get into it. So like I said, this is a 15-minute intermission in the play, but we're waiting a year to see what's going to happen, and apparently we will be getting a time jump that has been confirmed by some of the actors here, and it will actually be hopefully around 5 years according to many. That is how many are in the book that Gregory Maguire wrote, which is based on the musical and the play and also the movie we're watching. So this is actually a time jump in which we'll see Galinda has pretty much now become sort of the front runner of sorts and has assumed the mantle, Glinda the Good, as we know in The Wizard of Oz, as well as in Wicked Part 2, the musical. We now know that Oz is scared and there's a fear for the Wicked Witch of the West, who has now become the enemy of the wizard, and an enemy of the wizard is an enemy of the people. We also see now that Fiyero has also become captain of the wizard's army and now has a relationship with Glinda. So it's pretty much seemingly like Glinda is in control. She's pretty much trying to have everybody be at ease, and they're using the Wicked Witch of the West to have people controlled with fear and trying to turn anybody they deem a problem as a Wicked Witch of the West ally of sorts, right? So the Wicked Witch of the West is the big bad here. Now, one thing we do know happens here is that the love triangle we saw start in part 1 continues with Elphaba, Fiyero, and Glinda. We know now that Fiyero is part of the wizard's army because he is still trying to search for Elphaba, and he just wants her back. And we see Elphaba at the same time is trying to continue to speak out about the leadership of Oz, as well as the treatment of animals who are sentient. And Elphaba is trying to also help the flying monkeys that she accidentally did create in Act 1. Then she runs into the wizard as he attempts to turn her one more time, but he pretty much isn't able to, and then she's turned in. We then see Fiyero help her escape and leave, as he now leaves Glinda, and now Glinda is the one singing I'm Not That Girl, which was the song that we saw Elphaba sing in part 1. Another song that's going to be very popular will be As Long As You're Mine, with Fiyero and Elphaba as they reunite and profess their love to one another. On the other side of things, we see Nessa Rose, who is played by Marissa Bode, is the sister of Elphaba, who has now become the governess of Munchkinland after the death of the father, which I talked about in the part 1 and the explained. It did look like the father ultimately died. And now we have her in a relationship with Bach, who is played by Ethan Slater, who is just by her side because he kind of doesn't really love her, but he feels he should be there for her. However, we see that Elphaba visits Nessa Rose in Act 2, and her sister has resentment towards her for not ever helping her magic to be able to walk and all of this. Elphaba then gives Nessa Rose these silver shoes that allow her to walk, and then we see that Bach is like, okay, now I'm gone and I'm gonna go and try to fight for Glinda. We then see Nessa Rose try to use Elphaba's spellbook, the Grimoire, in order to put an enchantment on Vok, but then we see his heart shrinks. Elphaba has to then turn him into a man of tin so he can survive without a heart, and you see where this is going, right? The Tin Man is alive in Bach. Nessa Rose then becomes the Wicked Witch of the East, and then we see that this is just the beginning of the Wizard of Oz, right? So Nessa Rose actually spoke about her character and what's there to come in part 2 by saying, it is definitely less of a case of my character wanting to be fixed and more of her just taking in the magic itself. She also says that what is going to be like the whole thing with her character doing a 180 degree from part 1 to part 2, in which she is in a relationship with Bach. And she says, what was helpful to me was journaling as my character to fill in a lot of the blanks and to really get in the mindset of why my character changed, what her feelings were, the in between, how did she get to where she was today. Now, they did say that the songs won't change or anything like that, that songs aren't going to get cut. And this is what Chu had to say about this. No, I don't think so. I don't know if I can confirm or deny that, but in my first pass of it right now, but you never know, I'm still editing it. But I want to have the sanctity of the shows. If it doesn't fit in one place and I need to find a place where it does emotionally, or we need to change the lyrics, or we need to do things to change, but it will be the DNA of what it is. So these songs include Thank Goodness, Wonderful, I'm Not That Girl, the reprised version, As Long As You're Mine, No Good Deed, March of the Witch Hunters, For Good, and Finale. So we're rest assured that if you're a fan of the musical, all these songs will be included according to John Chu right there. Now, one of the things we also know from the beginning of Wicked Part 1 is that this movie pretty much is going to have the Wizard of Oz play out, as we saw at the beginning of Wicked with Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. Now, we do know that Bach is going to be the Tin Man. The Cowardly Lion seems to be that cub that Elphaba and Fiyero saved during the classroom, and I think that that's an interesting way to really bring it all together. I was like mind blown thinking about it because I had never seen the musical or knew the story of it, right? So definitely something interesting there. How does the Wizard of Oz come to play with Wicked? Well, according to this, it turns out that after Elphaba and Fiyero run off together, Linda then tells Madame Morrible that they may need to draw out the former friend by targeting the sister, and Madame Morrible just takes this into like a very drastic measure where Madame Morrible, since she's able to control the weather, uses this to summon a tornado that then lands a house on Nessa Rose, killing her. So of course this is where the Wizard of Oz starts off with, right? With the house falling on the Wicked Witch of the East. We then see that this is the same house that brings Dorothy Gale into Oz, and we see as Glinda gives Dorothy Nessa Rose's shoes and instructs her to follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. When Elphaba arrives, of course, it plays out like the Wizard of Oz, which is a trap in order to get her, but then Fiyero is the one that gets caught, but she decides to free him of pain by casting a spell on him, which in fact will turn him into the Scarecrow, as we know. This is where it was revealed that Bach is the Tin Man, and that the Lion Cub is actually the one that they saved is now the Cowardly Lion. So that's going to be in part 2 right there. So in part 2, we also see the Oz people storm Elphaba's castle as she is holding Dorothy captive because she is trying to get Nessa Rose's shoes back. We then see as Glinda goes to try and warn Elphaba about the angry mob that is arriving, and as they are talking to one another, we see that Elphaba decides to give up the fight and sings the tearful song For Good with Glinda. We then see as Elphaba is melted away by Dorothy as she throws a pail of water on her as Glinda watches behind a curtain. But then we see Fiyero, who is now the Scarecrow, show up, and we see that there was actually a trap door in which we see Elphaba arise. We then see both of them leaving Oz together. Glinda then brings the remnants of Elphaba to the wizard, which include the hat as well as the green bottle that she always carried that belonged to her mother. This is where we find out a huge twist is that the wizard recognizes this green elixir and he realizes Elphaba was always his biological child, and now we know that that is the one who was the father of Elphaba, because it was always like a big secret, right? Who was the father? And so it is then showcased that this is indeed her father. So it makes it all that much more sad, everything how this all went ahead and played out, right? We then see Glinda banish the Wizard of Oz and arrest Madame Morrible for murdering Nessa Rose. As we see Elphaba and Glinda lament never being able to see each other again, and we see that informs everyone that the Wicked Witch is dead. So a pretty bittersweet finale, right? Elphaba and Glinda won't really ever see each other again because Glinda now is sort of reigning supreme in Oz as Glinda the Good. But we do see that they are happy with what they wanted. Glinda has the magic and all of that, and she's now able to bring Oz maybe into a new direction as we see Elphaba and Fiyero go on about living their happy life together now. So I don't know what y'all think about that. Let me know in the comments below, and I really do think that this is such a very great way to end part 2. It is so awesome reading it. I had never seen this in the play or anything like that. I would love to see the play one day, but I'm excited to see this play out on the big screen, and I'm wicked pilled, y'all. I'm wicked pilled. I'm excited. I cannot wait. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the comments down below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We are on the road to 35,000 subscribers. We're so close to that, but I will be watching Wicked once again this week, and I don't know, maybe we'll do a live after I watch it. I wanted to do it already. Maybe there will be a couple of lives. I'm loving this Wicked whole ordeal right now, so maybe we'll talk some more about it if y'all want that. But we got a ton of movies we're watching this week as well, and I cannot wait to talk about them all with you, so stay tuned. But as always, that's going to do it for me. Stay safe, stay positive.